I even went to stay at his house in Poulton-le-Fylde when he was there, Beryl Dean. We walked in, there was his oak panelling, and on the oak panelling he had carved GF. And I said, George, is that George IV? He said, no, it's George Formby. Then he took me into a room. He was very proud of it because he loved expensive toys. This room he showed me and said, this is my Chinese room. And he had it decorated and furnished Chinese style. And on the wall were a lot of Chinese sort of hieroglyphics, characters. And I said, tell me, George, what's that? He said, here, that's Chinese. I said, is it? What does it mean? He said, that means George and Beryl. I said, really? Who did it? He said, I, local builder. I said, God, he's caught you. That's not Chinese, it's Hebrew. He said, no. Well, about 3 or 4 years later, I was at Yarmouth, and George loved his yacht, the Lady Beryl, and he came along and took me from the show and onto his boat. I was sitting there, and suddenly George turned round, and remember, this is 3 years later, he said, Tommy, was that really Hebrew? Or was it Chinese? And, you know, he'd been thinking about that for about 3 years, which I thought was marvellous, and this was typical of George. And quite frankly, I love George.
And the public loved him, and they loved his happy endings.
George! Never touch me. George, are you hurt? George, say something. Turned out nice again, hasn't it?
But for the real life George, there was no happy ending. 7 weeks after Beryl died in December 1960, he announced his engagement to a young schoolteacher, Pat Howson. But on the day he bought Pat's wedding ring, George Formby died. Most of his £150,000 fortune went to the fiancée of 3 weeks. The souvenir hunters flocked to the auction at Beryl Dean, and even the number plates off George's Bentley fetched £250. All through this program, no one has been able to tell in so many words just why George was so successful. This sequence with Pat Kirkwood indicates that he was no great actor.
What, do you mean, can I call you Anne? Well, Miss Johnson, I mean, Anne, will you do me a favour?
Well, depends what it is.
Will you come to the fair?
I'd love to.
Eh? Oh, pardon me. I think I've dropped a plate. That's a foolish thing to do. But I'm glad I introduced myself to you. Pardon me if I should criticize, but you really can't deny there's a fascinating twinkle in your eye.
He couldn't really sing. He got the girl in the end, but he always had trouble getting the dates in the first place. And when in doubt, he fell back on a song.
Great big jump as goofy as can be. If I look like that to you, then pardon me.
His ukulele and Beryl were the 2 great props in his life.
George, in his films, always gets the girl in the end. There was a different girl for each film, which was perhaps a wise precaution. But in his private life, I don't think girls bothered George very much. However, as a safeguard, Beryl was always there, on the set at every take, keeping dauntless watch.
All through his film career, there was only one leading lady he ever kissed on the mouth, and that was in his first movie. And the woman, of course, was Beryl. Well, perhaps, who knows? That's how it really was. It seems that though millions knew him, sadly, no one else ever got close enough to George Formby to find out.
Ordinary people What extraordinary things we'll do.
Now Mr. Wu was a laundryman in a shop with an old green door. He'd iron all day, your linen away, he really makes me sore. He's lost his heart to a Chinese girl and his laundry's all gone wrong. All day he'll flirt, scorch your shirt, that's why I'm singing this song. Oh, Mr. Wu, what shall I do? I'm feeling kind of Limehouse Chinese laundry blues. This funny feeling keeps round me stealing. Oh, won't you throw your sweetheart overdue? My vest so short that it won't fit my little brother, and my new Sunday shirt has got a perforated rudder. Mr. Wu, what shall I do? I'm feeling kind of Limehouse Chinese laundry blues.
Of Aragon and Castile. Mr. Mendoza, would you care to convey our best wishes and tell them what we've come for?
What do you mean, speak to them?
Well, you told me you spoke Chinese.
Oh, Becca Hava.